Hello. Oh, good. It works. Come on up. Yeah, no, come on up. Hello, everybody. I didn't grab myself a handout.
Hello. I am, yes. Thank you for asking. Yeah, this is a nice chair. I like it. Comfy.
Okay. All right. So, this has been a class so far with the need, with changing variables and the need for flexibility. And so far, you all get A marks. So, well done. I appreciate the flexibility. I appreciate even more your interest in wanting to talk about the issues of homelessness in our area as we are working on discerning how best to lean into that mission and ministry here at Hope Presbyterian Church. So, as we begin, let me offer just a few words of housekeeping. To begin, there are some folks who are joining us today online. One of the commitments that we've made at Hope is that whenever we do worship, worship is going to be always available in person and online. And at least the 11:30 Christian Ed class will always be hybrid. However, our 8:30 Bible study and our Wednesday morning Bible study is also that hybrid format as well. That's our commitment. So there are folks who are joining online. Now, normally, they're able to engage and participate because of the other room where we are. But in this room, it's a little more difficult for them to engage and participate. So they are both on the Zoom, but I've encouraged everybody to go to the YouTube channel and to watch it live there, which is where it's being recorded and broadcast now. So if that becomes you at some point during the course of this class, please, that's just fine. But send me an email to let me know that you did or that you are. And if you're watching online now, please send me an email. Let me know that you are so that I can take attendance appropriately. And attendance isn't for like me coming after you, but is more for my own personal statistical nerdiness. Okay? But also just to remind everybody that we are recording and everyone, there were handouts available. Thank you to Michael and Colton who put out additional chairs. Thank you to the deacons who came in and made coffee and brought donuts. I appreciate all of your effort in doing so. In the handout, there is an opening prayer, and I thought if I could get one person to lead us in an opening prayer, let us do so. Thank you, Avish. Amen. We are always striving to build a culture of respect and engagement and thoughtfulness, acknowledging that we are not a one-size-fits-all community, and we have a wide varying viewpoints. And so when we do Christian education, or when we are especially having conversations on topics that can lead to a lot of opinions, there is a class covenant that I like for us to remember. I'm not going to go over it. We did that last week, but to familiarize yourself with that so that you can participate and continue helping us build a culture of tolerance, a culture of listening and honoring the sacredness in each other. So this week, as we think about listening generously, one of those class covenants, I want to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourself. And by way of doing so, in the bulletin, in the handout, you'll see your one question is, what's one sound that you can listen to all day without getting tired. So be thinking about that. What's one sound that you can listen to all day without getting tired? And you can only respond with one word. You get 3 words altogether. Your name, and if you live in District 6, then I want you to say, I live in District 6. And then what's your one word sound that you can listen to all day? You ready for this? Can you cheat? I don't know. We're in the house of God. I mean, Carla, I'm going to start with you, and we're going to work all the way down over to Patty. We'll get Kathy and Lisa, and then we'll come up to Nancy and come back around. Okay, Carla? Lisa.
That was going to be mine. Wind chimes in the key of D. Wow. Bird singing. Good. Well, okay. Okay. All right. To be fair, she lived in District 6 almost as long as District 6. But she lives in Pflugerville now. What's the one sound? Yes, controversy abounds. What's the one sound you can listen to all day?
Good. The sound of silence. Good.
John Hopper, District 6, The Grateful Dead.
Wow. Wow.
Michael, I don't live in District 6, and good stand-up comedy.
Okay, good. And I'm Josh Robinson, pastor here at the church, and I do not live in District 6, but have been laboring here for 11 years. And my wife is a kindergarten teacher at Spicewood, and she's been there. This is her 9th year, and our son has gone through Spicewood, Canyon Vista, and is now at Westwood High School as a freshman. And so we've spent more hours a week in District 6 than we do in the city that we live in. So I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. Let me introduce to you our special guest today is Mackenzie Kelly. And I came to know her and followed her career more after her predecessor was Jimmy Flanagan, and she came in after Jimmy Flanagan and has been our council person for the last number of years. And I believe one of the things that I've really enjoyed about following her as our council person is her transparency and communication. If any of you who lived in District 6 received her weekly emails, it was always full of information, easy to read, not long and obnoxious with wording that doesn't make any sense. But what really most endeared me to Mackenzie Kelly was when we had our first freeze a couple of years ago of the 2 big freezes. And if you remember, there was a lot of water pipes that had gone out, and people didn't have water, and the roads were treacherous. And knowing that I could get to the church safely, I got here, got multiple of our 5-gallon jugs, filled them up with water, and was making my way through the neighborhood to different church members to deliver water and make sure that everyone had some water. What was remarkable to me is that a number of the homes that I got to, as I was arriving, her team had already been there and delivered water and was beating me to a lot of the homes. And I thought that what a remarkable servant of this district. The more that I've gotten to know her, some of y'all may remember that we had a murder here a couple of years ago, and Mackenzie was here grieving alongside of all of us that evening as we had the prayer vigil. Not just as someone who is the representative, the elected representative of this district, but as someone who is personally invested in this district. She has only ever lived in District 6. She was born here, she was raised here, she still lives here, she has served here. These are her people, and 2005 graduate of Westwood High School, and now as she is out of office, I'll let her introduce herself, including her one sound that she can listen to all day, which she said was cats purring, but that's what she said. She's, so, anywho, yes, some of y'all stole that, but it's okay. I'll let her introduce a little bit more, including some of what she is doing now, what she's transitioned out from the city council and into a new role. And by way of doing that, I've sent some of these questions to her in advance, and partly what we want to do is these are the questions that you all developed in our conversation last week, and we want to give her some opportunity to reflect back on them and for us to listen and to engage with what she has experienced in her leadership and her residency as a resident of this district, and help us in our discernment as we go forward. So let me ask you to introduce yourself. Again, so glad to have you here. And as you do introduce yourself, one of the things that I sent in advance was this question. From your vantage point as a council person, what are you witnessing regarding the state of homelessness in our community? And as you consider the challenges and opportunities that are there, what's one aspect of the situation of homelessness that gives you a concern, and in what is one aspect of homelessness that gives you hope. And again, we're so glad to have you here. So please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to your congregation for welcoming me with open arms. Anytime I've been here, it is just a pleasure. The energy that your membership has and the people who put in the work here to really be a family is incredibly something to be proud of. So I'm Mackenzie Kelly. I was born and raised here in District 6. My parents, I was just at their house yesterday. They live right off of Old Lampasas Trail. So I started on the Austin City Council when I was elected, maybe by some of you in here today. Thank you for that honor. In December of 2020, in a runoff election, I took office January 6th of 2021, and I left office on January 6th of 2025. Gosh, that's a long time. I was first elected when I was 34 years old. I'm 38 now, and I'd like to say I've grown up a lot since I got elected. I have learned a lot about patience. I have learned a lot about listening to people whose opinions I may not always agree with or want to hear, but as a representative of the community, it's important to open your door to people who you might disagree with so that you can learn more about what's going on. And when I first got elected, I didn't know as much about the homelessness situation here in Austin specifically. I knew that there were a lot of people who were very angry about the situation because it was something that they didn't understand. And to see individuals experiencing homelessness in a situation such as what we've seen over the last several years is really heartbreaking. And so I tried to dig into the details, and I suppose what gives me hope about the situation is that there are a lot of people who are invested in it and want to see it improve. They don't like to see human suffering. What's frustrating is the actual suffering that's happening. There are people who are being taken advantage of in these encampments that I've seen firsthand, and to see that type of human suffering, it makes me want to see things get addressed in a better way. And so by digging into things, I'm a real hands-on person. At the City of Austin, when you become a council member, you have access to unlimited information and a ton of subject matter professional staff experts who can help guide you. And I like to be boots on the ground. And thank you for recognizing the water distribution that we did. There's so much, I almost started tearing up. There's so much that we did that I wasn't able to highlight in my term because it was just the right thing to do. I wasn't really worried about getting the message out to people about, okay, we did this little project, we did that little project. But one of the things I did was I went into a homeless encampment. I rode out with Constable Stacey Suits' office. They're in Southwest Austin, and they have a sergeant dedicated to homeless outreach. And his name is Drew Mackenzie. He's a really great guy, and he considers the work that he does in that community to be servant leadership, and it absolutely is. So I rode out with him. We went into an encampment. We went into several. And in one of them, there was a woman, and she had on one shoe. She didn't have on another shoe. The encampment was just vast. It was several acres. Several men were in the encampment, but she was there, and she wasn't making sense. There was something very off about the interaction with her, and he asked me to talk to her. She's sitting on the ground, so I sat down on the ground next to her, and I asked her what her favorite ice cream was, and she was telling me things that just weren't adding up, not able to answer my questions. And we continued to talk while he talked with another gentleman in that encampment. And when we got back in the car, I asked him, like, what was that about? Like, what is going on? Can you help me understand? One of my favorite things that I learned to say on council was, please help me understand. Because it allows that people you're talking with to really open up and explain things. In my head, I'm like, please tell me like I'm 5 years old, because I really don't know what's happening here. But he told me that she's a victim of sex trafficking. She was being pimped out in the encampment for drugs or money, and the drugs that she was getting were interacting with her mental health care and the need that she had to help with her mental illness. And he was working on a way to get her out of there. And so I asked him, because as part of the process for individuals experiencing homelessness, there is it's called a coordinated assessment. So if we learn at the City of Austin there is an encampment then the city of Austin will send their homeless outreach team out there to go do an assessment on the individuals there and find out what their needs are. Because you can't paint every single person experiencing homelessness with the exact same paintbrush. Everybody, just like everybody in this room, has individual and unique needs that need to be addressed. And so I asked him, when these people from the city of Austin, they call it the host team, go out to do the assessments, do they ask any questions where individuals who are experiencing homelessness, they might find out if they're a victim of sex trafficking or human trafficking? And he said, well, no, they don't. And so I learned more about the coordinated assessments, and I learned more about signs of human trafficking or sex trafficking. And I drafted a policy that requires any individual, organization, or group that receives money or funding from the city to do homeless outreach, then they need to, at a minimum, have awareness training so that they can learn the signs and symptoms of human trafficking or sex trafficking. I think that's really important because average everyday people don't always recognize that someone may be a victim of sex trafficking or human trafficking. So now it's a requirement that if you're doing business with the city as a contractor related to homelessness, that you have to have that training. And that was because of that woman that I met in that encampment. I don't know if it would be the right thing to do to try to prioritize individuals in that situation to seek temporary housing or permanent sheltering, but after what I had learned was that some people may take advantage of that as an indicator to push them higher up on the list, but I do think that at a minimum that's important. And so one other thing that I forgot to mention earlier, you had asked me to talk about my new role. I transitioned off of council, and I am now the Director of Government Affairs for the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute. And what we do is statewide advocacy with legislators and senators to increase mental health care funding and resources across the state of Texas. And I'm a big advocate for mental health care, and that really ties into the homelessness that we have in the city. There are a lot of individuals who may have unmet mental health care needs. They might not be able to have access to get services to help get them out of that situation, but they also may have other needs that are unmet that they need to get out of. Maybe it's job training. Maybe they are addicted to drugs or alcohol. And by trying to find more resources or funding for mental health care, I think that we can really make a difference in the situation we're seeing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And what about the camps that you have witnessed during your time here in this Northwest Austin area? And I mean, I recognize that there are some of the visible ones that you see formally under the overpasses of 183, but we also know that there's some that are unseen. And what have you experienced or witnessed here, the unseen ones, up here in Northwest Austin, District 6?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, I like to be boots on the ground. I went to countless HOA meetings. Y'all, I didn't know that I would like HOA meetings. It sounded in my head, because I'm not a homeowner, like it was the worst thing in the world. But learning about problems that people were having, and then I got to be the problem solver, was really, it was a fun thing for me to do. So I went to an HOA meeting over off of Lake Creek and High Meadow. And the people that I met there were really concerned about an encampment that was on their private property. And so I set up a day, got 25 volunteers out there, coordinated with the city. The city sent APD out to make sure that if anybody was there, because we don't know if they're dangerous or not, we wanted it to be safe. And then also that would have been a way for them to get services as well, to get into that coordinated assessment. So APD went out, cleared the encampment. Nobody was there, thankfully. And then we pulled out over, I want to say 3.5 tons of trash.
Wow.
In the encampment. Yeah, and like 15 shopping carts. And the conditions that people are living in is absolutely abhorrent. There were biohazards that we couldn't touch, buckets filled with excrement. And to see that and to know that there was that type of suffering happening is just, it really tears at my heart, and it wants made me really want to do better about how we're addressing it, because there are millions of dollars that the city is spending, but at the same time, I want those dollars to be spent in the most effective way. And I wanted to make sure that any time that we had a contract come before us at the city, that the performance measures were such that we were seeing results and we weren't just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. What is the agency with the city of Austin that is kind of the key lead organization that is interfacing with those who are homeless or in the city of Austin? What agencies are those, or would that be?
So there's quite a few. Going back to that encampment, I forgot to tell y'all, I got chiggers. I had on long pants and bug spray, and for weeks after that, I just was like, it was terrible. So I couldn't imagine living in the woods like that. But the different agencies, so the way that it used to be set up before maybe 2 years ago, Austin Public Health was in charge of that. And they had a homeless outreach team, like a homeless strategy office that was underneath Austin Public Health. But one of the things that the city learned, they're always evolving, always learning, is that because they were under Austin Public Health, there were a couple more layers of bureaucracy they had to go through before they were able to get anything done. And so our city manager, our interim city manager, Jesus Garza at the time, he came in to replace Spencer Cronk. Spencer Cronk was the city manager when I was there, and I could talk to you for hours about why we got rid of Spencer Cronk. But when Jesus Garza came in, a couple of those were the responses to the winter storm and siloing of departments. It was a whole deal. But interim city manager Jesus Garza came on board, and he was able to really straighten things out so that some of the damage that was done under Spencer Cronk and the decisions that he made related to different departments was fixed. So when the new city manager came in, TC Broadnax, it would be a lot easier for him to just hit the ground running. And so they took the homeless strategy office out of Austin Public Health, and then they made it its own standalone office. And so the individual that's in charge of that, he is doing a great job. I know that we've switched department heads there, but he's awesome. When I was on council, if our shelters were activating overnight for cold weather, he would text me, and then there would be a message that would go out to the rest of the community. One of the other things I did on council related to cold weather sheltering, I drafted and authored a policy related to extreme weather. And in that, we changed the threshold for when we activate cold weather shelters and warm weather shelters. And the reason for that is because it was set to a much lower threshold. And I think it was like less than 32 degrees outside, and we'd open up the shelter. Now it's, I think, 35 degrees, which you might not think is a big deal, but when you're outside in the elements, it's a huge deal. And so one of the other things I really wanted to do that I wasn't able to get accomplished was to create a better system for receiving services. So right now, if you have to go to a cold weather shelter, you've got to navigate Cap Metro, which I can't navigate Cap Metro, and I consider myself pretty okay. But with somebody experiencing multiple complexities in their life and barriers, if they're living over here, to get all the way to One Texas Center to get registered and then to be sent to another place, that's a little, it's got to be pretty hard. So I wanted to break down those barriers and have maybe different resiliency type hubs here in the district so that we could take the barriers away. Before I was on council, I was involved in emergency management, and I went through a lot of training with FEMA. And one of the things that I learned was to take a whole community approach to things and to meet people where they were, because we'd have much better outcomes if that happened. And so that's something I'd like to see, is some of the barriers being broken down so that individuals experiencing homelessness can get to resources better.
I love that. Digging the one-stop shop approach. Time being a resource that it is, it may not. Certainly, folks facing homelessness are without finances and money, but time is also a valuable resource. And navigating the Cap Metro system, going here for your different services, finding a one-stop shop, resiliency hub. I hadn't heard that before, but I love that. From the city of Austin perspective, what did you learn or had been discussed as some of the root causes of homelessness, and in what ways were
Did those root causes influence solutions or be a factor of how you would navigate conversations?
Yeah, so there's a lot of causes. It could be as simple, I think, as someone just losing their job or being paycheck to paycheck. And as I was reflecting on this, I mentioned this a little bit to you earlier, but it's not lost on me that my family could have very easily become homeless when I was growing up, had it not been for the fact that my mom's parents really helped us out financially when we needed to. And my parents were paycheck to paycheck. They worked very low wage jobs. My mom and dad still work at Randall's. But being in a situation like that where you're not financially stable can be really difficult. And my family, there were at least 3 times where we weren't able to pay bills and we were evicted. And so we bounced around different houses and then landed over here. We're extremely lucky that we had my grandparents to lean on. There are individuals who, they lose a job, they have medical needs, it could be a conglomerate of problems that eventually lead to being homeless. One of the things that I would like to see, and one of the things that I'm really proud that we did when I was on council, I'd like to see some of the things that indicators of homelessness that happen be addressed before you get to homelessness. So maybe a way to bridge the gap between missing a paycheck because you're out being sick, or maybe a workforce development program like our mayor, Kirk Watson, was able to start. Giving people skills, but also resources before it gets to that place where it's not terminal, but you are homeless. You're living in your car. You're couch surfing. Things like that can be prevented. And I think just like with medical diagnoses, we know ahead of time what factors are going to get someone to that point. And by early intervention and mitigation, it will cost us less in the end, and it'll be less traumatic for individuals that go through that situation. And I think that's more compassionate too.
Thank you. And in the midst of all of that, you have the public sector, and then you have faith communities in a private, separation sort of way. But in what ways have you witnessed, either in District 6 or downtown, in what ways have you witnessed or encountered faith communities who were engaging in issues of homelessness, and what would you say are ways in which faith communities can better partner with institutions like the City of Austin?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a myriad of things. One of the biggest things is every year, ECHO, which is the Ending Homelessness Coalition, I can't remember what the O stands for, but they are the leader of yearly doing a point-in-time count. And they meet at a church downtown, and they go out in groups. And the point-in-time count is really important. That was another policy that I authored and brought forward. For 2 years, right after COVID, we had not done a point-in-time count to try and determine the vastness of our homeless population. And it's important to do that for federal funding that addresses homelessness, but it's also important just to have situational awareness, especially as a leader in the city, to know how the population, is it growing, is it getting smaller, what's happening? And so one night a year, ECHO coordinates the point-in-time count, and they go out and they count how many individuals they see experiencing homelessness. And so you go out in small groups and partner with ECHO and do that. One of the other needs is, right now it's very cold, and I had seen faith-based organizations do coat drives and blanket drives in order to help individuals that are out there in the elements. It's very, very cold for those individuals, and I speak to one woman now. Her name is Candace, and she wouldn't mind me saying this, but she communicates with me on LinkedIn, and she tells me about what's happening out there, what's going on, and she said they really need warm weather clothes and supplies. One of the other things that I've seen faith-based communities do is just keep kits in their car, hygiene kits. Hygiene kits, especially for women, are important. Those often go unlooked, but things like sanitary napkins and tampons, even ibuprofen, those things are important for women, and they don't often have access to those resources. And so putting little kits together is something I've seen faith-based communities do. Same thing for men. You could put together hygiene kits for men. I would put deodorant in there, things that like travel size things that would help them out, and those are helpful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that there are a number of things in pulling it all together that we have done here at Hope historically. So we used to be one of the cold weather shelters, and so when those would get activated, the city of Austin and we would bus up to 50 men, and we would host them, make them dinner. We had mats, and Cat Metro would bring them up. And then at some point along the way, a decision was made not to bus them up here anymore. And so we no longer became a cold weather station. And I'm not sure exactly the rationale behind that. Maybe we're too far, and maybe we're too far off the beaten path. I don't know. But part of what we grieved in the loss of that opportunity was those who need to sleep inside on cold weather nights, that number hasn't shrunk. So the need for cold weather shelters hasn't shrunk. And so another initiative that we've worked on are the little kits that you keep in the car, and those are helpful. And chapstick was one of those things that we included in there.
Maybe sunscreen.
Sunscreen, absolutely, during the summer, winter too. We also included a card inside of it that had resource information of where to go, like, here's how you would get to the Arch, and here's how you would get to this agency, and whatnot. And so I guess my question would be is, considering where we are in District 6, Northwest Austin, and in some ways, oftentimes it feels like we're a forgotten area because we are so far out here. And I believe that District 6 also includes a good portion of Avery Ranch area as well, which oftentimes gets confused for Cedar Park because Cedar Park is in there as well.
Yeah.
But because we're so far north, sometimes it feels like there's a big disconnection between the needs of our community here as a part of the city of Austin. So what would you encourage our community to think about as we're thinking about homeless ministries or homeless outreach in our area? And a number of us either live here in District 6 or we're up in Cedar Park, Leander, and a little bit further south, but not much further south here in Northwest Austin.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the individuals experiencing homelessness out here in our district pales in comparison to other parts of the city. We are really far away from resources, and that is not necessarily where individuals experiencing homelessness want to be. And you may hear in other weeks other people who come to this say otherwise, but I actually checked with the city of Austin, and they don't keep track of how many individuals are in which district of the city. When it's in front of you, sometimes it looks a lot worse than it is, and I'm not saying that it's not bad, because it absolutely is. But out here, one of the things that I would think that you could do that would really make an impact, and it's something, if I had more time, I would do it. Another thing that I brought forward on council was to expand the use of an outreach for opioid overdoses. Because we are so far away from the city core, and because our 911 resources are sometimes spread thin, and because I know drug activity happens in the encampments, I'm not suggesting that we're enabling individuals experiencing homelessness to do drugs, but one of the things that would be very helpful would be to get them Narcan kits. And there's a resource online through UT Health Sciences, and I think it's called morenarcanplease.com or something like that, and you can order up to 50 boxes of Narcan. They're double doses, so you get 100, and you can put those in the kits, and I think that would really make a difference if you were to go that route.
Wow. So that's the Narcan is something that is accessible to the public. It's not like a prescription based.
Absolutely, it's accessible to the public, and that's one thing that
You don't
has
have to
been
be a
changed.
prescriber to send that out, to
Not
get
at
that
all.
out.
Not at all. So here's the cool thing about Narcan. I mean, it's not cool that people have to take it. I actually advocate and I have some in my car in case I'm at a restaurant or something and someone takes a pill and they don't know that there's fentanyl in it and they go down. If you give someone Narcan and they're not having an overdose, there are no bad effects. It's literally like shooting water up their nose in the sense that it's not going to hurt them if you give it to them. And the city of Austin actually has classes that the EMS department will teach in order to, they call it Breathe Now training. And so they'll go out and teach people how to effectively administer Narcan. But with that program through UT Health Science, there's videos online that'll teach you more about it. I actually had two friends who were not known drug users that ended up going to Las Vegas for their birthday, and they were given some medication or a pill or something and ended up dying from it, and they left behind 3 kids. Fentanyl is really becoming, well, fentanyl overdoses can affect anybody, and so including that in the understanding that drugs do happen in homeless encampments, and destigmatizing having it on hand, I think, is really important.
Wow, okay. It's new information for me, so thank you, and that's why we're doing
I'll
this.
send you the link.
Oh,
so
please,
You can order some.
please do. And as we do our assembly line of making some kits, I hadn't thought before about including that in those kits that we hand out. And certainly, if it's someone that we're giving a kit to who may not have a need for it, they will probably know someone in their encampment that might know of the need, who might be in need of that, or at least have it on hand for when they see someone as well.
And it's a grant program too, so when you order the Narcan, you won't have to pay for it or anything. Like, the state just wants to give these resources out, and I think if you're doing that, that would be a great way to do it.
Thank you. Let me, before we take a few questions from church members, let me ask you, in your experience, both as just a resident citizen of our area, but also as a council person, how would you counsel others or a family member of, when someone's on the street corner, or when you're being accosted by or approached by someone who is homeless, what are some of the ways in which you would counsel, say, a family member of how to respond to them and to engage with them?
I think it really depends on the situation. I have sat with an individual who was experiencing homelessness, and he and I actually became really good friends. I used to think I hated downtown Austin just because it was so far away, and my mom, when I was growing up, she'd only drive within a 5-mile radius for us to do anything. So when I got elected, I was like, oh darn, I have to go down to City Hall now. But I started walking around and talking to people that I'd see regularly, and this one individual actually helped him get a job at there's like a Bob's Steakhouse, and he became a dishwasher. I was super excited. I was looking forward to going on my lunch breaks, and walking to go see him and see how he was doing. It was super cool. And then there was the chicken man. This guy walked around with a chicken on his shoulder. And he was approachable, I could talk to him. And then there was an encampment around City Hall with some really aggressive individuals, and gotta avoid those. But he was actually really upset when they were taking the encampment around City Hall down for some reason. And he was throwing stuff into the street at cars. And I was doing a media interview with Fox 7, and I was like, hold on a second, to the reporter, and I was like, Chris, man, what are you doing? And he said, I'm just really angry right now, Mackenzie. And I was like, I'd be angry too, but how can I help? And I knew I could approach him. I mean, I did it from a distance, but that's not for everybody. So what I would say is, whatever your comfort level is in the moment after you assess it is the best way to go. If you feel like it's a good idea to approach them, then approach them. Or maybe get them help. You can call 311 and let someone there know what the situation is, and they can refer you to 911 if they're having a mental health crisis. If they're doing something that's abnormal, it's okay to call and get them assistance. Austin is the first city in the country that has a 4th option for 911 now. So when you call 911, you get police, fire, EMS, or mental health. And so you can ask for that, and we have a mental health response team. And the the nonprofit that I work for now came into the city of Austin in 2019, did an assessment on how we could better do mental health response in lieu of sending law enforcement. That was their recommendation, and we're doing it now, and that's something to be super proud of. Other cities across the country are now replicating that. If it's dangerous, of course, the mental health response will also include a law enforcement officer, but that's for the safety of the individual responding. We have changed and completely revitalized the way that we do mental health response at the City of Austin.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's take a few questions from y'all. Don't be shy. Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely.
The question was if those resources through 911 are also available out here in Northwest Austin. Yeah. And part of the challenge that I think where we are like on this property is the county line between Travis and Williamson is Anderson Mill Road. And I know that 10 years ago when I called 911 from this building, I'd be routed through the Travis, but over in A&E, it'd be routed to Williamson. And so I don't know if that is, if the four options in 911 are also available through like Cedar Park and Leander. Do you have any idea on that?
I do not know, but it is something that I'm sure the county has on their website or the city.
Okay.
Oh, fantastic. It
Good.
used to be embedded in with their sheriff's department. They used to have a
Correct.
mental health officer through there, and they'd go through separate training. But, the coordination, I will tell you, has improved over the last 10 years between Williamson County and the City of Austin. I live in the Williamson County part of Austin, and so I experienced that, but I was also a volunteer with the Jollyville Fire Department, still part of the department, but they used to cover Anderson Mill Road or the Anderson Mill area until it was annexed in 2008.
So the CAPCOG, is that correct?
Yeah.
The Capital Area
Council
of Governments. And is one of those where there is this massive coordination of services far and wide. And some of those even recently have been emergency services that, just because you're on the Cedar Park side of Williamson or you're in the Travis County part of Leander, it all gets wonky, right? So where we are, we're in City of Austin, Travis County, but Round Rock ISD, it gets all wonky. And so the CAPCOG, Capital Area Council of Governments, really does a great job of streamlining that coordination. And I had a chance to take a tour of those facilities in East, I don't know, far away from here. And it is like being in mission control at NASA with, TVs,
really
monitors, computers, and you would be proud to know that there is this inter-office collaboration, intergovernment collaboration that is really helping our community. So, Michael,
Can I
and then
just-
Reeve. Oh yeah,
real
go ahead,
quick,
please.
Sorry, so we have an 11-member council, 10 members and the mayor. I was the executive committee liaison to CAPCOG. And what the pastor was talking about is public safety answering points, or PSAPs. And so there is a standard across the board in the 10-county region that they all are on the same system. So that interoperability that you were talking about is really improved as a result of that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. Michael, then Reeve.
I think it's wonderful that you're implementing Narcan and maybe potentially even naloxone as a solution. What are some of the challenges or your experience, maybe there haven't been, but with budgeting for it or getting people, reversing some stigma among people who can make those decisions? How have you introduced it to your system?
So the question is, what have been some of the challenges for the funding of Narcan or some of these agents that are helping to help combat the opioid overdose? And then what are some of the ways that have been helpful in overcoming the stigmas related to that?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question, and it's one that I should probably reflect on more now that I'm not on council. But I'll tell you, I brought forward a policy that prioritized the funding for naloxone and Narcan brand name. And I did that because, I don't know if y'all remember, but several months ago, or maybe it had to be last year, there were a spike in overdoses in the city. It was a huge spike. And I thought to myself, well, how do we end the stigma, but also do increased outreach? And I learned from talking with EMS and other departments that respond to those types of incidents that a lot of them will happen in a jack-in-the-box parking lot. You've got people doing a drug deal or something, and the drugs are laced with Narcan, and it becomes a hot spot. So the City of Austin is now doing a really great job of educating managers of those jack-in-the-boxes and other places where these hot spots are happening, and having that resource on hand. The funding actually came from opioid settlement funds that the city received as a result of the opioid epidemic. And so I was real proud to bring forward that policy so we could do more education and outreach. And one of the other things is the educational videos that the EMS department's doing. They're putting them up on the city's TV station. If you're ever really super bored and you want to watch a city TV station, let me tell you, we got some highly, highly awesome videos. And then just doing press conferences and talking about it. I think in a lot of ways that it's a bipartisan issue because it affects everybody. It doesn't care what color your skin is. It doesn't care what your age is. It doesn't care what your politics are. And I think that as a government, doing that outreach is important to mitigate future deaths. I could guarantee maybe over 50% of you probably know somebody who knows somebody who has died from a fentanyl overdose, and they're completely preventable by having this wonderful medication on hand that doesn't have any bad side effects. But I will warn you, if you ever have to use it on somebody, when they wake up, they're going to be surprised and they might punch you. So you got to be careful, but you just saved their life. The other thing I'll tell you is that if the City of Austin EMS runs a call on somebody who had a suspected overdose and they give them Narcan and they wake back up, they come back days later to help provide them with resources to get them out of that situation to prevent it from happening again. So there is follow-up. It's not just a one and done, which I really like too.
Good, thank you. Reeve.
I know we're going to be talking about community first in a future one of these classes. I'm just curious, Mackenzie, what you think is good and bad about that, and what does the City of Austin think about community first? It seems to be a great model. Why don't we have it here?
So the question is regarding the Community First Village, which is in East Austin, and we will not only get to meet Alan Graham, the founder of it, but we're also on a field trip out there as well. And Reeve's question is, what are some of the things that Mackenzie specifically likes and doesn't like? And then also separately, as the City of Austin, what are some things that the City of Austin likes and doesn't like about it? And is it replicable out here in Northwest Austin and in this area?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I've been out there multiple times and I really love it. If y'all are gonna go out there, I suggest you find the tree where you can eat the berries off of. It's super cool. And they taste delicious. I didn't know you could eat berries off of a tree like that. And Alan Graham just said, go ahead and do it. It was pretty great. But I like that they're a sustainable community, and that community part is really important. So they've done a great job with educating the individuals who are accepted into that program about policing themselves in a way. Not really policing, but if somebody gets a little bit out of line or they get obnoxious or maybe they're having a mental health crisis themselves, they help each other out. And by not having a support system like that, some of them got into that situation in the first place. And so I really like that. I like that everybody has their own tiny home. And not to speak for Alan Graham, but I've heard him speak enough times, he'll probably tell y'all, individuals who get a tiny house, sometimes they don't believe it's theirs. And so they sleep outside on the porch for several nights before they go in. It's like an acclimation process. And some people can live in that kind of environment, some people can't. It's not made for everyone. I like it. I think it's a great program. When I first got elected, the city was going to purchase a hotel in the district. They ended up doing that. It's Pecan Gardens now for $9.55 million. It's 73 rooms. I had a lot of objections to that, including the lack of community input, but I thought an alternative would be a model that is more sustainable like that. The cost is a lot less. We could have housed more people. Made some phone calls. I talked to the individual who represents the Robinson family's property and asked if they might be interested in giving a couple acres to the city of Austin so that we could have something like that model that Alan Graham has out there. The Robinson family wasn't interested, and that's okay, that's their own prerogative. I think that we need a multitude of options to help address the homeless situation, including models like his, in order to help get people uplifted out of that situation. And some of that might be permanent supportive housing, like Pecan Gardens, which is right next to Frida's on Pecan Park. Right now it's housing individuals 55 and up with disabilities who have experienced homelessness in the city of Austin for a year or longer. And so that is one place that individuals can go and get wraparound services where they have a social worker helping address their unmet needs to lift them out of that situation. Alan Graham's model is great. I like it a lot. One other one you might look into is Haven for Hope in San Antonio. They have an entire campus devoted to wraparound services and housing, and it's all located in one area. One of the things that I like about that place that I'd never considered until I went there and got a tour was kids who are homeless. So kids who are homeless with their families, in order to not disrupt their situation, if they're living at Haven for Hope, they have an agreement or MOU with the school district that the bus for the school that the kid was going to before they started to be homeless will pick them up first thing in the morning and drop them off last at the end of the day, so their friends don't have to know that they live there. And I just think that that's a real nice consideration that I'd never even thought about until I went out there. But it is just one big campus, and they have a place for people to sleep outside. So if you want to sleep outside, and you could do that. Some of those people, they might be drunk, or they might have alcohol in their system. Well, that's the same thing. Or they might have like drugs in their system. But if they're willing to step out of that outside living, then they can go inside if they follow a different set of rules. And so they just have the myriad of options available. And a lot of times people just have to be in a place to accept that help. They have to intrinsically want it to get out of that situation.
Yeah, yeah. Let me take two more. John and anybody else? All right, one more.
So you touched on it a little bit, but the tension between where you might have a shelter or some kind of a program in the community, and I think it's called Sunrise program, which is now very controversial. And one of the things that the homeless need to get a job is an address. And I know that's one thing that they provide. Is that something that we can do, or how would we be able to use this campus, since we have this wonderful building, as some kind of a shelter, or how can we get involved in something up here?
So the question that John asked is that one of the challenges of being homeless is you don't have an address, and when you need services or situations, you need an address. And so one of them, and I'm not familiar with Sunrise, can help provide an address. So John's penultimate question is, what are some of the ways in which we could best utilize our church campus and property? And I'm going to piggyback on to your question and add the acronym NIMBY, N-I-M-B-Y.
Not in my backyard.
Not in my
I've
backyard.
been called it so many
And
times.
so I want to piggyback with your question, which is, how do you work on, because the Robinson Ranch was thank you but no thank you, and some of the challenges of the hotel that you mentioned was also we didn't get feedback from the community, so there was not in my backyard kind of concerns there. The situation on Pecan Park also encountered a lot of ruffled feathers related to NIMBY. So what are some of the ways in which we can best utilize our church campus to offer some support to those who are homeless, even if it's just an address, and also at the same time overcome some of the stigma of homelessness that leads to or fuels not in my backyard?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm very familiar with Sunrise Community Church, and I've been there multiple times. So it's not just to get a job you need an address, but to get your IDs you need an address, because the DPS, when you go get a driver's license, they have to mail it to you ultimately. And if they can't mail it somewhere, then you're not going to get it, and then you can't get a job, right? So there's a lot of problems with not having an address. One of the things Well, Sunrise's counterpart is actually in District 6, and y'all probably don't know about it because it doesn't cause such a ruckus. It's actually at Mosaic Church. They have a day drop-in center for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. It's right there off of 183 by the U-Haul store. And I thought that that was interesting because when you look at the placement of Sunrise, it's in a neighborhood, it's right across the street from an elementary school, and rightfully so, some of the individuals who do seek services there are not super well behaved because of the situation that they're in. And so some of them seek psychiatric medication every day because they're given these prescriptions, but the doctor said you have to have a nurse give them to you. And so there's nurses at Sunrise who give them the medication, and they do mail for thousands of people. It's a great service, and it's one that we need more of, but it is difficult to overcome the challenges of the community when their expectations aren't set properly. And so I would say that if you want to do something like that, to maybe go check out what they're doing, learn some of their lessons, and see what you might be able to provide here.
Yeah, and it's probably not just that folks receiving those services might not behave very well in the area where there's an elementary school, but also some of the folks who need those services might not be allowed to be within the perimeter of elementary school, which could also make for a significant challenge for us as we have our own school on property, as well as we're connected crosswalk front door to front door with Spicewood. And so I think that's not a closed door, but perhaps maybe something that makes it more difficult to unlock and open for consideration as we're discerning our path forward.
But perhaps maybe some of you who are interested could volunteer time at Mosaic Church when they have that. One of the things that they also do is make food. I heard that y'all made food for the cold weather activations they used to have. And so they give food out there as well, and you can sign up to bring food and to do that.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Any final words you'd like to share, or any final thoughts you'd like to offer us as we're on this path of kind of revitalizing our homeless ministry outreach?
Well, I just want to thank you all again for the opportunity to be here. I'm glad that you sought me out to speak with you all. I will tell you that oftentimes I found myself in my role as a council member feeling like there just weren't any good options. And one of our former mayors, he was like, why are you so upset about this? Why are you going to vote no? Why can't you just pick which one we're going to do? He told me that sometimes we have to pick the least bad option with what's in front of us. And while it feels like we're never going to end homelessness, we can make significant changes to the challenges that those individuals face that will make their lives better. And I firmly believe as a participant in society that we are called to do that, to help others, and to make the world a better place. And so I'm just glad that y'all are doing this, to workshop ideas and listen to people who've worked in that space so that you can then go out and do those things.
Good, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Friends, let's close in prayer. God of grace, we thank you for the wisdom shared this day. We thank you especially for the gifts, the experience, and the expertise of Mackenzie Kelly. And we pray that you would guide her in her next vocation, that the work she does would be meaningful to herself, but also meaningful and beneficial to those that she serves. We pray, God, that you would continue to stir passion within us and that our commitment to justice would grow stronger. We pray that you would help us to walk from this place with a renewed sense of purpose and to ready to be in your hands and your feet in the world. In the name of the Christ, Lord, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next week.